Thank you very much and good evening, everybody. Very excited to be here with all of you. I've been listening to some of the sessions, and I have to say it's been inspiring, right? And one of the things that I believe that you're going to get from these next part of the presentation is that hopefully there is going to realize that there is a full alignment between what me and my colleague are going to present, Ali. And hopefully what we're going to discuss today is going to be of use for all of you. Like I was saying, like they were saying in my introduction, I've been working on this space probably since started my career in the early 2000s, and then I started to focus in the space of automation, perhaps beginning of 2015. And we've seen an evolution on how the automation technologies are progressing, right? On our company, we provide services all over the world to our clients in different sizes. And what we're noticing is that there is an evolution of what we're calling generation one, which is all of these technologies that can be applied that are not cognitive in nature, but they are purpose in a way where you can automate tasks that are focused on structured data, right? And a good example of that is robotics process automation, right? And there is a lot of very good things that you can do with that technology, but at some point you start reaching a ceiling in terms of the capabilities and what you can do with those technologies. Then there is the introduction of a second generation of technologies that we call generation two. In the market, sometimes that is also explained as something called hyperautomation, which is a collection of different technologies that have the ability to deal more with unstructured and semi-structured data, right? And we have a few examples of demos later today to talk about these generation two technologies and provide a view of what you can do with that. And then what we're seeing today is what we call also generation three, which is like AI-powered decision-making type of capabilities. In the previous presentation, you were hearing about what Microsoft is doing with finance. We're seeing that with our clients as well. And we see a lot more interest today in dealing with generation three type of technologies. And we have a very short demo of, how does that actually looks like. And I know probably a lot of you are wondering, right? Like, how do you progress through what we call intelligence at scale? Having the ability in an organization to actually leverage all of these capabilities and the difference between them, right? Like, and the one thing that is important for me to highlight is when you're going from generation one, generation two, all the way up to generation three, is that generation three is more of an aspirational goal, right? It's making sure that as you're designing your strategies on how you're going to run your business, you always have the concept of AI as one of the value levers that you can pull, right? And make sure that you're always thinking about how to leverage in your data, how to create AI models that are going to drive how your business process run, right? And ideally, we're going to get into a stage where a high percentage of the business processes that are part of the finance function of our organizations are led through artificial intelligence. And I know that the session, the webinar has been running for quite a while now. So I'm going to be doing a very quick demo on where are we seeing, for example, the concept of generation three artificial intelligence being used. I'm pretty confident that everybody has heard about ChatGPT or generative AI for a while. We're using these capabilities with our clients to help them very quickly deploy highly intelligent models that can be used in all kinds of different areas of the business. And although I don't have a very specific finance use case at this point, I'm going to do something that is general purpose So you actually get a feel on how the technology can work and how easily you can deploy that. And then how can you apply these capabilities in your different business processes? In this example, what we're doing is we have a highly unstructured data set. And this data set is not from our clients, it's something that we can grab from a public data science data set. But basically, we are processing, in this case, complaints from travel websites, right? So everybody knows that there is always a lot of information and data generated. In this case, what the AI is going to be doing is going to be reading information from complaints, right? In every organization, there is always issues to be handled and a lot of information that you can extract from them. So we're going to train in a matter of few seconds the artificial intelligence to actually extract data from a highly unstructured complaint about a website. And I'm going to tell the AI, hey, I need you to please give me the topic of this complaint, right? I need you to get me the names of the companies. I want to know the locations. I want to know what the sentiment is, right? And in addition to that, rather than getting all of the data, I just need a short summary. And to make matters even more interesting, I'm going to be asking the artificial intelligence to not just give me the information in natural language, but transform that output into something called a JSON, right? JSON is a format used to transfer data across the internet. It's very famous for developers and the APIs. And as you can see, in a matter of seconds, I have the ability to transform something that is highly unstructured into something that is a structure. I can very easily plug in a Power BI dashboard, a Tableau dashboard into a data set like this and start gathering insights, right? So this is an example in how in a matter of seconds, you can process data with the use of artificial intelligence. And intelligence doesn't just stop there, right? It has the ability to very interestingly understand the data being processed. So just to demonstrate how smart these technologies are, I'm going to be asking like an extra question. Besides all of the stuff that I'm asking, I'm saying like, can you please provide what the monetary impact is going to be for that complaint that we have? And I just do that and I say, give me the information again in this JSON machine readable format. We're going to run the AI. I'm going to put a different text, and then the tool is going to have the ability to actually understand what the impact actually is. And hopefully, I know it's a small, you can read the text, but there is multiple references in the text to currency and money, right? But there is one in particular that says like, I pay $5,000 and by the delay, now I have to pay an extra 200 euros. I'm sorry, right? And the technology is very smart to tell me, hey, the amount on dispute here is 200 and this is the currency, right? This is just an example to show how these generative AI or AI capabilities are evolving. Now imagine deploying this in multiple areas of your business, right? But this is one example that I have for you today that is very specific around the concept of language models, right? Being able to communicate with an AI and start asking questions. And as you notice, it's not just a matter of asking any other questions. You get the ability to actually very quickly train these models to get the information in a way that is useful for you. So the next demo that we have here is around a different topic. So that one was more around language models. The following demo is from a company that specializes in RPA, but they're starting to work on areas of generation 2 type of technology. So this is the ability of actually understanding documents. And when you're understanding documents that are going to be documents in which the actual content of the text is very important, right? But in this case, this technology has also the ability to apply computer vision type of capabilities and understand the layout of the content of the document, being able to extract data from tables and other sources that are, very important and kind of hard to understand for us humans. It's very easy to look at it, right? For computers, is rather difficult, but this is another area where we're seeing a lot of traction and a lot of clients investing resources in exploring these technologies because there is a lot of benefits and it's getting better, smarter. So let me run this demo.
Have you ever thought how much time employees spend on document processing? And it gets even more challenging as the documents vary in their structure. Some of them have a fixed format and are easy to process, like forms, passports, and licenses. Some of the documents have no fixed structure at all, like contracts, emails, and health records. Others may contain both fixed and variable parts, like invoices, purchase orders, and utility bills. That's why there is no easy way to automate document processing, even with traditional automation software. All this becomes possible with UiPath Document Understanding, the way to process documents intelligently. To handle all the different document types coming their way, the robots learn how to read and interpret documents. They review rules, expressions, and memorize the names of the fields. They study really hard to make sure they know how to approach a specific document, be it a passport, invoice, receipt, or a utility bill. Machine learning develops our robots' artificial intelligence, making them brilliant at taking on the tricky bits like varying templates, handwriting, signatures, checkboxes, skewed or rotated documents, various file formats, and low-quality scanned documents. All these challenges and more, UiPath robots using document understanding can happily overcome. From time to time, a human will just check in to validate their performance or handle exceptions. This way, robots become little helpers who can read and act upon documents for you to ensure the most rapid and accurate results and save costs. Mitigate the risk of human error to avoid related losses and improve customer experience. Save your employees from the mundane to make them happier and help them focus on higher value tasks. Put your robots to work on your documents intelligently with UiPath Document Understanding.
So, and I hope that the latency in the video was okay, and you were able to hear what the sound was, right, and render well. But this is one area where we're seeing a lot of growth. Clients in different companies, they have a lot of semi-structured documents like invoices, bill of lading, and all kinds of different forms. And these technologies are really helping them, right? And this is what we call a generation 2 type of technology, because it requires what we call supervised learning, as you were seeing in the video, right? Like, it's one where the AI can do a lot of work, but there is always going to need a level of supervision to actually check the output of the technology. In addition to that, there is always the need to constantly keep training the technology. Again, we're seeing a lot of benefits from the technology. The level of accuracy is keep getting better, but a very interesting thing on the generation 2 technology to keep in mind. And the other thing that I want to share with all of you today is, why are we seeing companies making intelligent automation a priority on their strategy, right? And there is multiple factors. One that is very easy to actually outline and understand is cost, right? Being able to actually improve the efficiency of the operations, you can certainly achieve that with the use of the technologies that we have a lot highlighted, right? But interestingly enough, one thing that I learned over the years is that cost is something that, of course, is very attractive, but hardly is ever the main driver around deploying this type of technologies. In the previous session, they were providing the story about Microsoft and how they managed to actually only grow 50% of their workforce, but the revenues grow significantly. And that has been what I've seen happening over and over again, right? Like most of our clients are thinking about how can they keep the base of the FTEs that they have in the organization and actually drive more growth with the use of these type of technologies. And that's the main theme that I've seen over the years, right? Like having technology support my growth. And it's not just a matter of keeping the same workforce, but actually improve their day-to-day and their work-life balance, right? For example, cost growth. And then the other one that we hear a lot is the concept of talent, right? In certain geographies, part of the challenge with talent is that it is hard to retain, right? So today I'm living in the US, but I started my career originally from a country in Latin America. And this situation of retaining talent is not like a problem there, right? But here in other geographies, like the US, if the work is repetitive, then there is a problem of actually keeping staff on a particular role because they will like to be more challenged and they will like to use more of their cognitive abilities in the job. So the use of deploying these technologies to avoid rotation and make sure that the work is more fulfilling is something that we do a lot for our clients. And then the other piece that happens is when you deploy technology, you're going to have consistency on how the process is going to be executed. You're also going to have full visibility on how the process are being executed. And then you get the ability to audit how all of the information is being processed. Therefore, you get to reduce the risk, the inherent risk that goes into executing a process. So these are like the four major drivers that we're seeing our clients using in order to go ahead with the implementation of intelligent automation technologies. The other thing that I want to highlight as well for all of you is when there is discussions around automation, the concept of, robotics process automation is automation. And that's not truly the case. And I know throughout the course of this webinar, there has been a really good discussion around other technologies, right? And what we call like the best fit, which is for every particular problem, there is going to be probably a technology that is better suited for a particular problem domain, right? So some of the mistakes that we have seen some of our clients made is like, oh, great, I have an RPA technology. So every problem that I have is going to be solved with RPA. That is not the right option, right? Or if you have a client that has Alteryx or they have NIME or other data management technologies, they feel that every single problem that they have in the organization can be solved with that particular technology. And the reality is that's not always the case, right? You need to have an open mindset and make sure that you look at the problem, you look at my strategy, right? And then you get the ability to solution architect what the right implementation is going to be of a collection of technologies, right? And that's what we're calling hyper automation. For every given business problem, you need to think about what is the best fit technology for that, and also make sure that whatever initiative that you have is responding to a corporate strategy. The other thing that you can see in this chart is at the bottom, we have different technologies that we see are relevant in the concept of automation. And at the top, we have different domains that are also very important, right? Making sure that there is a strategy behind how you're doing the automation is very important, right? And we're going to double down in pipeline management, making sure that we have the ability to accurately identify the use cases, make sure that there is a business case behind it. Then we have the ability, what my operations model is going to be. It's not just a matter of building automations for the sake of building automations, but at some point, these automations are going to require maintenance. How we're going to do about maintenance, how we're going to do with change management, how we're going to deal with licenses, how we're going to deal with infrastructure, right? So it's important to have an operations model because if you do not, the first few months that you're building automations is going to feel great, right? Because you're seeing a lot of work. being done through automations, but I promise you, at some point, you're going to start needing to do changes, maintenance, or the individuals that build the automations, they're moving on in the company, they're doing something else, they leave the organization, right? So you need to have a plan on how to deal with that. And finally, everything related to risk and controls. Make sure that if your company have the tools, that they're using the tools in the right way, right? That they're not, for example, creating automations that will create a lot of stress on the underlying systems, or they're accessing data that shouldn't be accessible, right? So it's important to consider all of that. So what I'm trying to say is technology is great, right? You need to make sure that you have a plan on how to deal with that technology. And then finally, the other thing that is very important is, great, I have the technology and I have a governance model behind it. How do I come across actually finding the right opportunities for my program to automate? And there is multiple different ways in which you can do that, right? Like one way is what we call the bottoms up, right? You can start asking different team members, right? Like what we call like the functional stakeholders. Hey, what are some good areas for me to automate, right? Like this is what I have highlighted here in form-based intake tool, which is basically a bottoms-up approach, right? Like you can have like a top-down approach where leadership is saying, hey, we really need to improve our treasury. We really need to improve how long it takes to do the close. We really need to improve our cash collection, accounts payable, right? And then leadership is actually taking a proactive approach on how to deal with the transformation. Or you can use other technologies like process or task mining. These are technologies that you can deploy in the organization. They're going to gather different data sets. They're going to build a process model, and they're going to help you identify deviations on how the process is being executed. Different, for example, bottlenecks. And one of the output of those technologies is you can get a portfolio of automation ideas that you can pursue, right? So regardless of what approach you take, you always need to take a data-driven approach on how you're going to be dealing with this, right? Like, so whether it's through a form, whether it's leadership, you always need to make sure to look at the data, right? Once you have the data, then you need to have deep dive sessions to actually understand the implications of building the automation. And then the other thing is, just because I have a really good approach, I have the data to back it up, I have talked to the stakeholders, you always need to look in the business feasibility of actually doing this, right? And then also the technology feasibility, right? Sometimes the two don't marry up. So it's important to always keep that in consideration. Once you have all of these different steps, with a lot of confidence, you can start building a roadmap for your automations. And this is something that I'm telling you from experience that requires a lot of attention, right? Making sure that you get to the place where the business stakeholders are aligned, and then from a technology perspective, you have everything that you need to actually move forward, right? Because I've seen multiple times where the idea is great, the technology is not the appropriate technology to actually implement this, and then you run into all kinds of different challenges, right? As you're thinking about building the business case, right, there is like 3 different areas where you can focus. First of all is start to prepare to understand how big the opportunity is going to be, right? Make sure that you have executive alignment, right? Like the other one is, how feasible is this for me to actually pursue? Making sure that you understand the different technologies that you have available, that not only is that technology, but also is the business going to be ready for the implementation. Something that is critical to understand is, as you're building these automations, right? Like you may have a team of dedicated developers, specialists at building the automation. Sometimes the business counterparts, they're very critical, right? Like what we call like the subject matter experts that actually know how the process works, how everything needs to be put together. They may not have the availability to actually support the development team, the COE team. So if that is not there, then it's something to consider and maybe postpone the development of the automation. And then the other thing is how quickly you can do it, right? Make sure that you have a business case. Make sure that you understand what the roadmap is of other initiatives in the organization, and that you're not working on something on the business side. Let's say that we're working in finance and we have autonomy, we have the licenses, we want to do the work. All of a sudden, you are ready to start. And then there is another initiative led by IT, for example, that is going to sunset some of the systems that you're trying to automate, right? So it's important to have that alignment. The other area that is very important is once you have your governance model, you have the technology selection, you've been able to identify the use cases, is think about how am I going to be measuring the benefits, right? And that one is, again, I've been using the word important a lot, right? But that one is paramount as you are going through your program. Because is like I was saying at the beginning, it's not all about how many hours am I saving, right? And what we've seen is building these or thinking about these key performance indicators very early on is going to allow you to shape how you're going to design your solution, right? And the best way that we have found to do this is focusing these three different areas, right? Like what are going to be like my key operational metrics? How am I also going to measure the adoption, right? Because keep this in mind, this is a paradigm shift. If you're deploying technologies, it's going to be digital workers working with humans, right? So it's important to always keep track of metrics around adoption. And then finally, right, what are my impact KPIs and what benefits? Basically is the things that we can control, what we can influence, and then things that we can expect, right? Like, so always keep in mind how you're going to be measuring those benefits. And we're getting to the end of the presentation that I have today, but this is something that we've been working on for quite a while, right? And there is different areas where you can think about automations, right? And like I was saying at the beginning, there is going to be a few where rule-based automations and technologies like robotics process automation or tools like Alteryx are going to be a great fit. There are others where you're going to need more cognitive type of capabilities, like the few that I was demoing. And typically what is going to drive the use of cognitive technologies is going to be my data inputs, right? If my data inputs are highly structured, chances are they'll have the ability to do that with rule-based automation. If my data inputs are unstructured, like pictures or documents, emails, right? Like I'm going to need a different type of technologies, right? And for that is we're highlighting those in yellow. The other thing that is important as we were talking about governance is that there is going to be an organization, all kinds of different roles supporting an automation program or a COE. And what we notice is the most successful is when you have the business engaged, when you have like the functional users that know how to execute the process. The higher the level of engagement that you get on any automation program from these stakeholders, the higher chance of success you're going to see. And that's something that I've seen over and over again. The moment that you get a leader in an organization saying, let's go with the automation, a top-down approach, but there isn't great engagement from the stakeholders that are day-to-day executing the manual process, that's where you start seeing some gaps in the level of success, right? When you have the business stakeholders understanding what the goals are, when you have the business stakeholders truly committed to the success of the program, everything works really great, right? So keep that in mind, right? Like there is always important to have the concept of a business engagement lead, somebody that works closely with the COE, really understand the technology, that is excited about doing this, right? Having that role is very important, and that needs to be a business-led type of role, right? You can even have developers. These technologies are low code, most of them. So if you have somebody that is keen in learning technologies and they really understand it, we've seen clients where they are deploying their own automations, right? But there is always going to need to be a lot of support from a COE and also from the IT department. But this is what I have for all of you today. Hopefully this was useful. And Ali, I don't know if we want to go into questions or comments.
Yeah, so thank you, Oscar. Quite an exhilarating discussion all throughout the webinar. And a lot of questions have been raised, which is very good, very encouraging. What I see here is that there is an abundant realization that we can't miss the automation bandwagon, and surely we cannot. I'll just try to zoom in the discussion to our landscape and what we generally see in organizations. And I'll try to zoom into the discussion towards that. So what we generally see in organizations is that there is a perception that, for example, if we are operating in an economy with a low HR cost, so these advanced automations do not really not feasible for us. What you have mentioned is that there are other benefits besides the cost as well. So can you just focus a bit on that side? What can we achieve besides the cost efficiencies?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. And we've seen that a lot. Sometimes the licensing costs and the cost of build can be onerous, right? And if you are trying to work in areas where the hourly rates are rather low, then it's probably not going to make a lot of sense. But I'm going to just to reinforce the point that I was making earlier. There are all kinds of different benefits that you can see from the use of the technology, and one that we see happening a lot is not just the hours, but also, like I was saying, the consistency in how the process is being executed. We see clients double down on that area, because when we have humans, right, we tend to not execute the process the same way every single time, and that is going to cause issues with the output. That is one area, right? So yeah, that's and then the other one is the growth, right? Being able to keep your base, and the moment that you have these automations deployed, you get the ability to actually execute way more transactions, which is going to be beneficial.
Right. So I just discuss a use case. So I was working with a utility company which has hundreds and thousands of consumers, and they collect the bills, and they raise invoices every month. So they were getting the pictures of the meters, and then they were manually putting it into the invoices to be raised, which is an ideal use case for something like an RPA or an intelligent automation to actually read through those pictures and then translate them into the invoices. So a lot of opportunities that I see in the local in the context where even the HR cost is low, but there's a lot of need for accuracy, speed, agility, and scale. But coming back to the first demo that you have demonstrated on the Chat GPT, and it's top of the tongue for sure. I mean, it has really changed the way search engines and these things are looked at. But there is another consideration to it. So for example, when we feed in the data to an AI, so it will only be as good as the data is fed. What if the data is skewed and it is resulting in a biased actions being recommended by the tool? So how to actually govern that part of it?
Yeah, that's a really good question, right? And it's a very common concern whenever we talk to different stakeholders about it. And if you go back to that circle slide that I was having, where at the bottom you get the technology, at the top you have a governance model, right? This technology is not something where you have the data, you create the model, and then you click a button, then it goes into production, right? You need to have a governance model around it. And that is a very good point, right? Making sure that there is no bias, making sure that there is no false positives, which is something that I've seen happening a lot, right? Every time that an AI makes a recommendation, it comes with a confidence score between 0 and 1. And sometimes you see the AI saying hey, I'm 97% sure this is the correct answer, and it's not, right? So you need to have a governance model to look into that, right? And it's important to, pay extra attention to all of that. When you're talking about AI and machine learning, there is a couple of ways in which you can do that, right? Like one is what we call supervised learning, which is you start teaching the AI and you have a list of a data set and telling, hey, these are the answers. And then you're supervising how the algorithm learns, or there is unsupervised, saying like, hey, there is all of large data set. Here's what you can learn about it. And you start, in groups analyzing their results. It's important as we're dealing with these technologies, they're not unsupervised, right? Like make sure that as you are deploying these technologies, there is always like a human filter that is going to make sure how the technologies are working. And listen, right? I don't think that we're close to the place where these technologies are going to replace human beings, but it's certainly going to accelerate how quickly we can get to value, right? And that's why it's important for every organization, right? Like the way we're using that internally in the company that we're working is to accelerate how fast we can do the work, right? And make sure that, like I was saying at the beginning, we get to focus more in the tasks that we're good at, right? And the stuff that, we can get our own personal assistant driven by artificial intelligence, we do that.
Right. Right. And what is the like the required majority or the ideal majority level in terms of automation of an organization to embark on these like advanced like automation tools like RPA, IPA, these things? Because generally organizations have like bits and pieces of tech, and there are still other processes which are manually driven or manually performed. So what is like the ideal automation level of an organization to go into this?
Yeah, that's a really good question, right? Like I think the first thing that they need to acknowledge is that these technologies, they need to be accompanied by a team that is going to support it, right? Because what happens sometimes is that there is a mistake around thinking that this is something that anybody can do, which is partially true, right? But like I was saying in my call, at the beginning, it is important to actually have a governance model around it. And the best thing to do this is to have a progressive approach, right? It's not like, oh, I need to start with a massive team of individuals that are going to support the automation program, but you can start small and then keep growing. As you're growing, always keep in mind that you're going to need an extra layer of support and guidance on how to deal with that. Don't ever think that, oh, I don't have this governance model, so I don't get to actually do it. Yes, start building, start learning, right? But always keep in the back of your head that keep like a growth mindset. You're going to be doing more. Make sure that you're ready for expansion, for growth, and make sure that you're communicating with the different stakeholders to make sure that there is always a plan around how you're going to support the automations. Because I promise you this, regardless how talented you are with the automation, I've seen this happening multiple times, they are going to fail. And when they do fail, you better have a plan to fix the problem in 5 minutes rather than 5 hours, 5 days, 5 weeks, 5 months. So thinking ahead is going to be beneficial.
So effectively, I mean, it's like if they're not like leapfrogs that one can take in the organization, there have to be like small steps which are to be taken to actually create the space for larger leaps to be taken. And what are the biggest challenges or like pitfalls that you've like seen organizations getting into while they're embarking on this like transformation journey on automation or like these advanced tools?
Yeah, number one is sometimes like lack of alignment, right? It might be like I was saying at the beginning, sometimes it happens when the middle management is excited and they want to go ahead with the program. Upper management not might be fully aligned, and then that causes a problem. And sometimes it's the inverse, right? Like it happens where the top leadership is fully aligned, but then the experts, which are the ones that actually execute the manual processes, they're not on board not because they fear the technology. That has not been my experience. It's just because they don't understand that they don't see the vision, right? So being able to clearly communicate what the goals are going to be, what the expectations, it's number one, right? Like then the other one is making sure that there is going to be a system of support, right? Making sure that there might be full alignment between leadership and middle management. But if you don't have a governance model, once you start moving the automations into a production environment and they start running into different issues, very quickly the level of excitement goes into frustration, right? And then before you know it, everybody is like, and I heard this a few times, oh, I have an automation that should make my life easier, is making my life harder, right? And it's because you did not plan for the automations to fail, right? And then the third, I believe, is probably making sure that you're selecting the correct use case, right? Like that framework that I was showing around the different steps that you need to take, that's also very important. Sometimes we see, oh, there is alignment with the vision of the program. Oh, I have everything that I need from a support perspective to be successful. Let's go ahead with the automation. You're automating a process that shouldn't be automated, right? And that creates, again, excitement translating into frustration. So making sure that you're selecting the right use case is critical. And then the fourth is going to be, just because you have RPA doesn't mean that you can do everything with RPA. Just because you have Alteryx doesn't mean that you can do everything with Alteryx. And I can say the same about Python, right? Like you can pretty much automate whatever you like with Python. Let's make sure that you have the right technology or the collections of technologies, right? And I think that is also a sub part of picking the use case. But if as you're doing the selection of the use case, you need to be thinking about the architecture, the solution architecture, not just technical architecture, but also business architecture, right? Like, so think about the overall solution, and that is an important part of selecting the use case.
Yeah, I see your point. I agree with you. I mean, what we have seen is a lot of organizations who have put tools and technology above and or before the people, talent, governance, and program management, and have really like paid more than the cost of technology. So effectively, these things are like absolutely critical. I'll hand over it back to Zed because I feel we are already a bit above time. And thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.